Hello once again from the Prim Reaper. Well, unlike the first video, I'm not going to start with a big preamble. We've got a lot of dreck to get through, so let's get on with it. But please, do watch the first video before you watch this one. I'm going to be referencing note 1 from that video again, so if you need a refresher, open up that video on the side and I'll still tell you the relevant timestamps from that one. So with all that being said, here we go.
So once again, just the conflation between equality of opportunity and equality of outcome?
Yes. Once again, it wasn't me who originally made that distinction.
Okay, and then we got the straw man of communism. Nice move.
What? Who is talking about communism? It was just another easy example to show why equality of outcome isn't really feasible.
So if you look, empirically, we can see that, once again, certain different groups within society face difficulties and advantages that other groups do not. Intersectional analysis is looking at how the different identities in a person's, part of the different aspects of a person's identity, how they interact and the ways they push or pull people towards certain outcomes in life. And generally, we want to draft policy that, on an aggregate, tries to balance this out as much as possible so that intrinsic identity traits about you don't play a strong part in your likelihood to be able to succeed in life. The Venn diagrams are not even.
See note 1. Also, the Venn diagram is not mine, except for when I added the cheeky additions to it. And just to be clear, there was no rhyme or reason to those. It was meant to be silly.
Let's see how she works with this.
The original message was really just intended to get people to try to see the multiple layers in which a person may be impacted by the factors of their identity. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that, hey, that's not really an offensive message.
Way!
In fact, I would almost...
Yes! Yay! We both believe the original thing is fine and sensible.
A lot of people that hold key and hold very intrinsic to their worldview, and more of the individualistic analysis you're presenting here, being that, at the end of the day, it's only your individual effort that make up your success in life, and that's the only thing we should look at and the only thing we should analyze. They would hold the belief that, okay, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what identity groups you're part of, it's going to be your effort that decides your advantages or whatever, so we shouldn't really do, policy based on, intersectionality. We should just, tell people to work hard.
I disagree that I have said that only individual efforts should matter. That's never really what I was intending to get at. That's why I presented the argument at the beginning that one's background is going to impact their life course. Instead, I'm basically trying to state two things. First, that I believe we shouldn't make assumptions about privilege or disprivilege about a person regarding their immutable characteristics. And second, that I believe what should be viewed by others as most important is the way you treat those around you, what you give to the world, rather than your immutable characteristics. I understand that these things are not going to exist in a vacuum, but a lot of people are focusing more on the immutable characteristics piece than these other things that I just mentioned, and I think that's leading to some needless divisiveness.
She brings up this academic concept and then levies a critique towards this highly complex and well-thought-out academic concept based on, one website and, a poor implementation of it, in which somebody appears to make, or attempts to make, a numerical, designation of a person's, intersectional score or whatever.
Oh my god, no! I am levying a critique at the people who have chewed up and spat out the original very basic concept of intersectionality and have turned it into this Frankenstein's monster of these groups have privilege and these groups do not. Like you literally said not moments ago, there are certain people who are just dumb and aren't doing proper intersectionality.
It's literally, she says it's a satire website, and she still includes this as a critique. This is their first critique. We're 6 minutes into the video, and the first critique she's levied against the system is this: there's a website that does the thing bad.
And you're accusing me of strawmanning? Yes, I included this website, because as I say, it's a good visual example of how many people are unfortunately using intersectionality. Not because it renders the original concept of intersectionality useless. Try to keep up.
And now she's talking about some cringe corporate policy, team building, HR exercises. Please.
No. No. Stop right there. You don't get to move the goalposts like that. Again, you said it yourself. Cringe. You acknowledge that it is bad and oversimplistic. But there is a legitimate and very well-established agency that is using it as a training tool for its staff. There are other agencies that are using it. There are university courses that are using it. These places are training people to think in this cringe, oversimplistic way about intersectional categories. And the more and more people don't stand up and challenge it and point out why it is cringe and why it is oversimplifying things, we will have more people who are dumb and don't do proper intersectionality. More people who view privilege and oppression as a simple matter of where you sit on the chessboard of identity. You don't get to just hand wave it away because you yourself agree that it is cringe. That is the entire point.
So she has analyzed or recognized a few of the disadvantages that comes with being a woman in the current patriarchal society, okay?
Subtracting a point for
Oh God, spare me with the patriarchal thing. We have legitimate, real-world examples of patriarchal societies where women literally do not have the same rights as the men in those societies. And no, the point here is not to analyze the difficulties. The point is that if you look at all of these experiences through the lens of, you are a woman and therefore you get -1 privilege point, you are more likely to view them in a negative light and less likely to acknowledge that most of these topics I brought up in this segment are more complicated than that. The statements I made in this segment are not mere statements of fact. Let me try and provide some direct contrasts. They have always had more access to different careers. They have always been expected to work while women didn't always have that expectation upon them. We have to have all the babies and sacrifice our careers to raise them. We much more readily get the remarkable privilege of being allowed to stay home from our careers longer to raise our children. We have to deal with being afraid of being attacked at night on the streets. Being attacked on the street, while not super common, is not a gendered crime, and we should all exercise care and caution while walking alone at night. The point is, you don't have to view these things in this manner, but if you look at your life through an oppression lens, you can find many ways to turn innocuous happenstances into markers of personal oppression. This is not a beneficial mindset to encourage. Unfortunately, in many ways, we are.
Congratulations, you have understood intersectionality. Oh, I swear to God, this video. Whoever told me to watch this, I am very annoyed at you right now.
Let me give you a hand here. Man, this video sucks. Also, just as an aside, I'm very annoyed at them too.
This is literally intersectionality. Through this skit, she has done an intersectionality, okay? She has done an intersectionality. She has demonstrated that, okay, these are the disadvantages that one faces by being a woman. These are the advantages. Now, let's look at them and look at the way they interact with people in society. I swear to God.
God, I need to make a tally chart for the number of times the point has been missed.
It's so dumb. It's so stupid. It's like imagine this. Okay, this is the mind space that we're in right now, okay? We're in the mind space of you have an intrinsic or just like an instinctual negative reaction against social justice based on a bunch of conservative talking points that you've heard over the past decade, okay? You have that instinctual reaction, okay? What you then decide to do is you decide to attack a straw man, like an oversimplification of the given, academic framework that social justice is based on, intersectionality, and you then decide to rebuke that oversimplified version of intersectionality with complete intersectionality. And then you're framing this as if you have disproved or you have pointed out the issues in intersectionality, in social justice. It's like you're creating your own just pointless debate in your head where you're using the arguments for the thing you're critiquing to make your critique against the thing. It's ridiculous.
What's ridiculous is the number of times I have sat here with my head in my hands every time I pause your video and before I start writing a reply to it. Again, your confusion comes in because you think I am attacking intersectionality or social justice as a whole total concept. I'm not. See Note 1. There are ways that people can use an intersectional lens to explore the complexities of the life of an individual in a way that is sensible, that adds richness and depth to understanding that person. Then, there are ways that people can use an intersectional lens to oversimplify, to put people into boxes, to make assumptions. If most people were using the idea of intersectionality in the former manner, again, we wouldn't be having this conversation. However, I have seen enough examples of people using it in this latter manner that I have seen fit to criticize that. Okay, breaking the fourth wall here for a moment. Am I insane? Am I really explaining this so poorly? Please help me out, because I am legitimately baffled at just how much I am not getting through here.
Okay, and to the Oprah example, this is the classic example. Oh, what about a homeless white guy and Oprah Winfrey? Okay, true. However, what's to say that Oprah Winfrey wouldn't be in a better spot if she wasn't black, if she was white? And who's to say that the homeless white guy wouldn't be in a worse spot if he was black? And if you look at the likelihoods of that in regard to the way society treats these different identity groups, it's not that, hard of not that far of an assumption to make, really.
Putting aside the fact that I think a significant portion of Oprah's success is because she was such a strong black female role model for so many people, why would one want to automatically jump to the assumption that Oprah being white would add to her success rather than any other outcome? I mean, she was already labeled the most influential woman in the world, for God's sakes. What more can we expect? Also, weren't you just criticizing me for supposedly oversimplifying this subject? Yet here you are making a very surface-level statement, like, who's to say she wouldn't be better off if she was white? Like, I don't think you mean it this way, but do you not see how dismissive and condescending a statement that is?
Okay, I want to see how this cooperation problem is proves that intersectionality doesn't work. I'm super excited for this.
Again, that's not the argument. The argument is that highlighting differences between people in an oversimplistic manner may make them feel less inclined to collaborate and cooperate.
Okay, literally nobody's making the argument that if you're black, you're just fucked. It's like, it's over. It's done for you. If you're a woman, it's fine. Nobody's saying that. However, what's to say that Oprah Winfrey wouldn't be in a better spot if she wasn't black, if she was white? And who's to say that the homeless white guy wouldn't be in a worse spot if he was black?
I'm sorry. I know that's not what you were saying, but I couldn't resist teasing. It was just too easy.
These are extremely complicated and nuanced different pressures on a given individual's life based on these identity groups. On top of that, I completely fail to see how her system of sort of like individualistic analysis on the world as a whole will make people like look out and like want to work as a collective more than a more like intersectional approach where we recognize like the different societal pressures that society is putting on us as a whole as people and working together to overcome those. It's ridiculous.
I am not looking at things in an individualistic way. I am saying that if we focus less on the differences between us and more on the shared humanity we all have and how we all deserve basic human respect, we can develop stronger bonds and the drive to want to support each other without turning it into an us versus them narrative. Daryl Davis did not cause so many KKK members to put away their robes by highlighting the differences between he as a black man and them as white men. He did it by talking with them and sharing his humanity with them and showing them that they really weren't so different after all.
Oh, her rebuttal of intersectionality is that some rich people donate to charity.
I've really been trying to be nice despite my frustration, but do you realize how stupid you sound when you keep holding up this false and ignorant argument that I've never made and then keep making straw man points off of this argument that doesn't exist? You are tilting at windmills and have been tilting at windmills for an entire half an hour so far, and will undoubtedly continue to do so for another 18 minutes. So I'm sorry, at this point I'm just gonna save us all some time and skip some stuff.
Now it's a hierarchy between the three, with men supposedly on top.
No, that's the straw man. That's the oversimplification. That's the incorrect understanding of social justice. That is the incorrect interpretation of intersectionality.
Do you think I created this wheel, champ?
So what she's critiqued here, the example she has laid forth, is a misuse of the idea or the concepts or the phenomena of mansplaining, okay? So what mansplaining is, it's a situation in which a man sort of, based on the gendered expectations and the gendered, suggestions we have for different gender groups in society, assumes that a woman knows less about a given topic than them, and therefore might explain something that the woman is already perfectly aware of in a condescending way. So, for example, a great, case of this is, for example, I can remember like plenty of times in school where like guys will argue about like psychology. with girls who like literally take psychology as like their higher level class within the International Baccalaureate program, and they will like talk about like things like biases, and they will be like, so I understand what you're saying, but there is like a thing called like a bias. It's like basically when you have like this idea in your head and you have like this presupposition, I suppose, and whatever arguments you're making, you're kind of trying to appeal to that presupposition.
The joke almost writes itself, doesn't it? I think one element about this whole thing that really grates on my nerves is how he feels the need to have to explain in depth all of these topics I'm making light of as if I don't understand the true concept. Like he acts as though he is helping me out by illuminating the truth. As if I don't really know the real concept, I only know the straw man term as peddled by biased conservative media. It's not true. I am surrounded by people in my day-to-day life who are academics, who consider these kinds of things to be legitimate, who often share broad, detailed descriptions on what they are, and regularly provide their own anecdotes and experiences with them. To a significant extent, I've studied and even written about many of the concepts myself, being a master's graduate in the social sciences. I'm not making fun of the concept because I don't know about it. I'm making fun of the concept because I do know about it, and I don't think that it constitutes a legitimate idea. I think it is a needlessly gendered concept, because once again, we seem to be trolling for any ways that we can dismiss men and attribute negative things to male behaviors. I'm making fun of the concept because I don't think it is solely in the male purview to act in a patronizing way. And even if a man does act in a patronizing way and needlessly explains topics that a woman is already well acquainted with, I wouldn't assume that it's because he's a man and I'm a woman, and that he automatically assumes he knows more than me. That's why I provided the examples I did. Terms like mansplaining are born out of lazy thinking and a desire to attribute malice to behavior just because they are coming from men. We already had a word that served the behavior just fine. It's called condescending. Heck, even patronizing, if you want to focus on the pater as the root word, is not inferring that it is a behavior specific to men, but rather refers to the fatherly or protector role of looking down upon children or subordinates. I'm going to jump ahead a bit here, because all he talks about for the rest of this segment is just stuff I've already talked about before, and I'm really tired of this. But let me quickly go on record about some comments in the side chat that I'll be skipping over.
There was like no arguments presented within this video. It's actually ridiculous. There was like nothing.
Yeah, wow. That fakey weirdo non-existent Prim you made up in your mind sure has no idea about anything, does she? Good thing she doesn't exist. Anyway, he goes on to briefly go over an older video of mine as well, and let's just hurry up and get through the last few points worth mentioning. And I use the term worth very liberally here.
Trying to develop positive internal strengths to build themselves up or become better-rounded, more whole, more contented individuals. It's coming at male behaviors from an external focus, telling them all the ways that certain aspects of themselves are bad for them, strictly from an outside view, without taking into account how these supposed bad behaviors might actually be servicing them. This is especially...
Yes, that's the fault for toxic. That's the issue why we can't talk about toxic masculinity. It's fault. The fundamental fault in the conceptualization of toxic masculinity is that. But have you considered the fact that bottling up emotional trauma and not seeking help about it might actually be good for you?
Well, it's nice to know all of your previous comments criticizing me for supposedly constructing straw men are now officially meaningless. Or is it not so much of an issue when you so blatantly do it? If you were just going to sit and argue with this last video in this bad of faith, why did you even bother? Like, this is so laughable and so far off the mark that I scarcely even need to dignify it with a response. It's actually insulting on multiple levels that you would say something like that. Do you feel good about twisting my words into the most negative thing you can even think of, even though it's not even close to what I said? I'm going to level with you guys. I hadn't watched this far into the video before I started writing the response. When I got to this part, I actually had to sit back for several minutes. I think it's just the other stuff, whatever. This is all just basically philosophical nonsense. We're bantering over misunderstandings, you know. But this, men's issues is like a core aspect of who I am, and I'm motivated very strongly by wanting to help them. This level of deliberate misunderstanding felt like a legitimate hurtful slap in the face for audience lulls. Hope it was worth it. I was close to just closing out on that note, but no, let's just finish this off for posterity's sake.
That's because you guys keep misunderstanding toxic masculinity. That is why people have to preface it with that every time. Because if we don't do that, then people like you think it's just like a generalized critique on all men ever and all masculinity.
No, we don't. You're once again missing the point. I know, shocking. I'm going to reference an article by Barry, Walker, Liddon, and Seeger. It's called Reactions to Contemporary Narratives About Masculinity, a Pilot Study. It basically interviews men and women regarding their opinions on 3 terms: traditional, positive, and toxic masculinity. They were asked questions like, the idea of blank masculinity is insulting. The idea of blank masculinity changes the way we see all men. The idea of blank masculinity may have a harmful impact on boys if they hear or read about the term. Let me post the main graph, where 24.6% of men and 19.2% of women found the term traditional masculinity insulting, and 33.5% of men and 30.2% of women found the term positive masculinity insulting. 87.9% of men and 84.6% of women surveyed stated that toxic masculinity was insulting. Similarly damning numbers across the rest of the board as well. It's not just this big collective misunderstanding that you're holding up like people just don't get it. It's not that hard of a concept, especially considering that the people who support the term won't, how did you say it? Shut the fuck up about it. Rather, people know what the term is intended for, and they find the term to be insulting and unhelpful. If you come up with a term in the process of trying to help people, and the people you are trying to help tell you, no, we find this term offensive or bothersome or unhelpful. Why, rather than saying, oh, okay, that's not good, let's go ahead and shelve that term, would you instead insist on saying, no, you guys just aren't understanding it correctly, full steam ahead? In case you're still confused, let me try to explain it another way. Masculinity and femininity, as much as we can agree they are influenced by the culture around us, are necessarily tied to biological sex. That is, the masculine references male-related traits, and the feminine references female-related traits. Like, that's just the definition of those words. I provided several examples of behaviors in that video, of the behaviors that people think constitute toxic masculinity: bottling up emotions, violence, dominance, competitiveness. By taking all of these traits and wrapping them up in the label of toxic masculinity, you are affixing these behaviors you view as problematic to the male category, as if they are a problem to do with maleness, masculinity. But there's a problem with that. These behaviors aren't solely the domain of men. So when we have women expressing these behaviors, we aren't going to come at them and say that they're having a toxic masculinity problem, are we? No, we simply address the problem behavior, which is what we should be doing across the board, identifying and treating problem behaviors. When, of course, they are a problem, because many of these traits are not a problem 100% of the time. Instead, by taking a cluster of behaviors and attaching it to masculinity, you are attaching it to the male identity. And it doesn't matter how many caveats you attach to that, you are making it more likely that men who encounter this term will experience a sense of shame, or that the problem lies within themselves, rather than that the problem is a certain behavior they are exhibiting. Even if you absolutely must stick with the "this is a male problem" idea, if you merely go for a simple framing change, for example, these are behaviors that men are more likely to exhibit or to be negatively impacted by than women, That will be less likely to yield the same backlash because you are not ascribing the problem as being something within maleness as a whole.
So she just made the argument that the recognition of toxic masculinity as a concept is what's driving mental health issues among men. Which is just such a galaxy brain take.
Considering how you can't even listen to a sentence without omitting half of it in order to create yet another straw man for you to tear down for yucks, you're the last person in the world who should be talking about galaxy brain takes, kiddo. God, this whole video is like a universe brain take.
Dream Reaper, if you ever want to have a conversation on any of these topics in relating to social justice, toxic masculinity, feminism, just any general like progressive social thing, 100% up for doing so, okay?
Hey, I know I'm gonna make fun of your arguments in bad faith in front of a live audience for the better part of an hour, but if you feel like spending some time chatting with me, I'm totally up for it. All sarcasm aside, I really don't like doing this kind of thing. Generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of taking time out of being with my family to arrange live streams. I was going into this entirely prepared to say, no thanks, I think I would prefer, and that obviously Rose's side chat viewers would prefer, that we part ways and never again shall the twain meet. But ultimately, I think all of us are going to feel better about this whole awful debacle if we actually speak like civilized humans and clear the air, so off we go.
I'm traumatized. That video was... oh my god.
Kid, if you're traumatized by my videos, I suggest you get off the internet and go play in the sandbox. Quick, before you discover that Goatsy exists. Go now, save yourself. Anyway, I'm sorry you all had to sit through that. It couldn't have been easy. It sure wasn't for me. But, newsflash, I don't like doing this kind of thing. I don't really feel good about any of it. It all kind of feels like an icky, embarrassing miscommunication, misunderstanding, mischaracterizing mess. So I just want you all to know that for this and the last video, I'm going to be donating 100% of the proceeds to charity rather than just my usual 15%. Frankly, I don't want to make money off of something like this. It would just make me feel worse. At least this way, maybe we can all feel like something positive came out of it. I'll be returning to my normal content for my next video, so thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.